Hey, we're live. We're
All
live.
right.
What up, everybody?
How you doing, James?
I'm
To
doing
our
good.
listeners.
Hey, Joaquin. This is fun. I haven't been live in a long time. I'm gonna let's start it off here. My name is James Baker, and I'm here with my good friend Joaquin Rosales, who's also live on his channels. And he is an immigration attorney. I'm a CPA, and today I'm going to talk about some tax stuff. And Joaquin's going to talk about immigration stuff. We're going to have a little conversation, a little interview, and hopefully, if we're live, some people show up and can ask some questions because we want it to be interactive.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great being live again with you. It's been a while, Jim. But just so everybody knows, just like James said, I'm an immigration attorney. We focus on investment visas, talent-based visas, executive transfers, and all that really is very intertwined with what James does, which is entity creations, corporate structuring, and then obviously taxing, which is very important for the United States government. So we're going to go over a few topics that are very important for our audience to understand in terms of what are your responsibilities tax-wise, and what are probably the best scenarios or corporate structures, depending on what your business is or what kind of visa you're in. And James can dive into those things. So James, without further ado, let's get into it. So
Joaquin, hold on. Time out 1 second. I think we're not streaming on my main channel, so I'm going to add that. We're only streaming on my Spanish channel. Save changes.
Good.
I tried to add it just now. Now we're streaming on my main channel. I that's so funny. When we started the stream, I was gonna set it up from my side, and I named the screen. I named the stream how to get a visa and pay zero taxes. That's what I was gonna how to move the U.S. Just some clickbait title. Wow. But I'm happy I'm here. I think I'm live now. So if you missed the intro, yes, Joaquin, happy to be here. Immigration attorney Joaquin and tax professional CPA James. So it's a re-intro for my channel. So if you guys have questions while you're here, please comment and we'll answer. And so Joaquin, tell me what's new with immigration front right now. I know it's pretty crazy in terms of like the ICE stuff in the US, but tell me how it's going with visas. Are people still getting their visas approved?
Yeah, so that's a great question. We obviously heard across all sorts of media and social media platforms about the crackdowns that you're seeing all across the United States. What's really important to highlight is that these crackdowns are aimed towards people who came in here undocumented. There's no denial that they have been pretty strong in that regard, but we haven't really seen much change in terms of the investment visas, the employment-based visas, the talent-based visas, and we can talk about those in much more detail as we go along. But the visas that are sort of the legal pathways to get here haven't been sort of influenced in a negative way, or we haven't seen, as a matter of fact, in the past 6 months, any sort of push by the administration to try to curb on those. Once again, they want talented people here. They want people who are going to be paying taxes here in the United States, right? So those are not really a main issue for the administration. So on that regard, I can tell you we haven't seen influx of denials or a little bit tougher sort of politics. At least on the administration side when it comes to employment-based visas and talent visas, as well as especially investment visas. Those are still pretty strong, and denials are not coming in, which is good.
So okay, good. So visas, if you want to come to the U.S. and you want to do a visa process, it's coming through and it's still getting processed like regular. All the noise and buzz in the U.S. is really about removing people who are undocumented or don't have the right documentation or overstaying visas or whatever. So obviously, if people are working with us, we're going to make sure that we get the right paperwork in, we get them approved and done correctly. So what are the what's like, is there any news, like what's the most common visas you're pushing for right now? Like what's the most like what's going on right now? What kind of visas are you really pushing through the most?
So right now we're seeing a lot of an uptick on investment visas like the E2. We've talked about this a couple of times before when we've had our videos or our lives. A lot of people have a misconception that the only investment visa out there is is the $1 million one, which is the EB-5. But the E-2 is a very great way to, get your business going here in the United States. Is relatively cheap in comparison, definitely to the EB-5, which is a minimum of $800,000. We've seen businesses be approved for as little as $75,000. The whole point is that you need to have a really straightforward corporate structure, right? You need to set up your entity, get your EIN, your bank account, and then obviously invest in a business that's either already existing or a franchise, for example, or if you want to do your own business, but it has to make sense, right? So it's really important to document, these investments, make sure that it's pretty clear that you're trying to start a business in the United States that's going to stimulate the economy, that's going to employ Americans or residents, and that it's going to bring in tax revenue, right? So that's why I also, it's really interesting that we're here together, so we can talk about those responsibilities on the tax side, and then on the compliance side, right? Because just like anybody else, even if you're a foreigner, if you're here with an investment visa, your business has to file their taxes. So I mean, I'll let you talk a little bit about the process of the entity creations and all that, because it's really important in terms of corporate structuring and how you want to do it. And that's where you come in. And we have obviously, worked with you for a very long time. You've helped a lot of our clients when it comes to that.
Yeah. So the E-2 is super popular because a lot of people can get it for freedom to come in and out of the U.S. Because I've heard, and I'll talk about this in a second, about the pressure that people are getting at USCIS coming in and out of the country without visas, because I think that's been another step up of enforcement. I'll ask that at the end of my question. But when you have an E-2 visa, it's really awesome because you can come into the U.S. as you please, come out. You're definitely legally allowed to be here, allowed to work here, allowed to have a business here. But if you stay here less than 183 days in 1 year or 120 days year over year, you're not a tax resident, or you can avoid being a tax resident, and you can avoid paying tax on your worldwide income. So for a lot of people who just want more global mobility, want access to the U.S., but don't necessarily want to pay taxes on all their income here, the E-2 is one of the ideal choices, especially for entrepreneurs and business owners. Now, you can comment on that, but I want to also ask, because this is something that's big that's coming up, that I've heard personally, what experiences have you heard from clients before they have their visa about coming into the U.S. on the ETSA, and what kind of questions they're getting from people? Because I've heard this from clients who've been coming in and out and saying that they wanted E-2 now because the immigration people at the airport are being real jerks, and they're being real high pressure with everyone. Yeah. So tell me some stories about that. Yeah,
exactly. So, I mean, in previous administrations, so there's the B1, B2 visa. A lot of people just associate that with that's a tourist visa, when in reality, the B1 part of it, it's a business visa. The only thing is that it's not a business visa in the sense that you can work and actually get paid in the United States. But you can come in here, talk to your potential clients, expand your clientele base, close some contracts, talk to your providers, whatever it may be. That's completely allowed in this type of category of a visa. But now with this new administration, they're getting tougher in questioning this type of things that you're going to be doing in the States. Where the problem comes in is when people don't really know how to explain it, or like you said, you get a jerk agent that's sort of reviewing your paperwork when you're coming in or asking you questions. People get nervous, and then all of a sudden they say, yes, I have an LLC, I have a business. And they say, hold up, wait a minute. You're saying that you're working here in the United States? And then obviously with the pressure of being in the airport in front of the officials, people tend to, say things that they don't really even mean. And they find themselves in a situation where they can potentially just get, turned right back around. And then all of a sudden they're not allowed to come to the United States, for a certain period of time, where you have to reapply or your visa gets canceled. So more often than not, we're seeing an uptick on people who are realizing this. They have businesses over here. So they say, why not just, get an E-2 visa? So I have that flexibility. Like you said, you have an E-2 visa, you can come in. There's not going to be questions about it. They know about this visa. They know it's, one of the most sought after visas. And it's not just simply any visa like the B1, B2. You're actually coming here to do business here in the United States, employ people. So they're not going to be giving you a hard time once you have this type of visa. So it's a great option. And then, like you said, I mean, you can come in and out as many times as you like, and that flexibility.
The B1, B2 is a little different than the ETSA because B1, B2 means they actually got a visa. The ETSA is just
Yeah,
like people who travel without any visa, just on the visa waiver
exactly.
program. And I
Yeah,
think
so
that they've been even more strict with that. I talked to a lady who was just getting like some kind of medical procedure done in the U.S. and she was coming in for a follow-up appointment, and they gave her so much crap. They made her show medical records. They made her share a lot of information with the people at the airport to just get in, and she was able to get in and get her appointment and go back. But yeah, I think she was on the ETSA program with like an Italian passport, flying from I think Venezuela or something. But yeah, but if you have a B1, B2, that's great, and E2 is even better because then you can come in, do business, do whatever you want. So that's what you're helping a lot of people with is getting these.
Yeah, exactly. So going back to what you mentioned about that particular client they had. I mean, the ESTA is not really a visa. It's sort of like a visa waiver program. That's what it's called, right? You don't need to apply for a visa, and it's just with certain countries that the United States feels comfortable that there's not huge percentage of people, right? And the statistics that show that they stay, right? So that they feel pretty comfortable in allowing this type of people, but they only give you 3 months, and it doesn't particularly have sort of the description like the B1 where you can do business when you're on a B1. Unfortunately now, not only for people who have ESTAs, but also B1s and B2s, you might be questioned, and it's a pretty sticky situation if you don't know what you're saying, right? So yeah, the E2 and all the type of visas are good ones. The L1 for transferring executives or bringing in expanding your business here in the United States. It's a great option as well. So it's a matter of like you sitting down with professionals to do this, like myself on the immigration side with you, in terms of how to structure the corporate side of things, so you maximize your gains and your profits here in the United States while being compliant with the tax laws in the United States.
Yeah, and I'm thinking like most of the people from like Europe and stuff, they don't get visas. They just come on the visa waiver program. They just travel in, they do what they got to do, and they leave. But the point is that we're trying to allude to here is that they are being really tough at the airport. If you do travel to the U.S. a couple times a year and you do have some kind of potential business ideas, like if you wanted to do some kind of visa, the E2 is one of the more popular options right now. So tell me right now, the E2 is a investment in basically a business in the U.S. Tell me some of the most common businesses people are investing in. Like, what are people setting up to get their E2 visas? How are they doing it?
I mean, there's a myriad of different businesses, but I mean, anything from small businesses.
What comes to mind? What comes to mind? What's the first one?
Look, a lot of visas. We're doing in the food industry, right? Like anything from small cafeterias to restaurants as well, right? Beauty, commercial cleaning, and also residential cleaning, and there's also sort of like elderly care as well. We're seeing a lot of that, and like I said, barbershops are always a big thing that we see a lot. Even
like service businesses, like small service businesses, like
small service
painting businesses, barbershops, nail salons, exactly. That kind of stuff, right?
Remodeling houses or kitchens, pool cleaning services.
Low overhead businesses, though, right?
Yeah. So they're pretty good. I mean, and relatively speaking, they don't take a much sort of huge amount of investment. I mean, the whole idea is what they want to see is that the business that you're proposing makes sense, right? The amount of money that you're investing in this business is going to make sense in order for you to like grow the business and then employ Americans. It's not a requirement that you have employees immediately, right, for these investment visas, but they want to see a projection, right, in the business plans that we prepare for USCIS, that you're going to have employees in the future. So that's something that's important to keep in mind. And that takes me back to being compliant with everything that deals with taxation and your renewal of your entity. Perhaps we want to switch the corporate structure depending on how big your business is growing. You have employees, you got to send out 1099s, W-2s at the end of the year, all of that. So that's why.
We'll shift into some compliance stuff. That stuff's the worst, but we'll shift into that. I'll answer those questions. I want a quick transition, you Joaquin. We got a question here. I'm posting it on the chat. How can an E2 visa lead to a green card? So run us through that.
Sure. So there's several options that you can do. First off, if hopefully your business is doing good enough that you get to the point where you have enough investment money from your original business where you can do a step up and you can apply for the EB-5 with $800,000. So you can apply for the EB-5. So hopefully that will be one route that's feasible and possible for you if your business is doing well here in the States through your E2. Another one is just there's other visas that are related to what you've accomplished here in the States. So if you have a pretty good track record, and the best way to do it is to be here in the United States and show the government that you've been able to have a successful business. It could be in an industry that's very important for the United States, right? There might be a lack of services or attention to people that are in need in that particular field that you're in your business, and you can apply for maybe an EB-1 or EB-2 in IW.
So you have an E2, and then you can just apply for an EB-1 with the same business.
Yeah, it's more about like what you've accomplished with that business and whether that business it's something that it's important to the country if you're doing the EB-2 and IW. But for the EB-1 is whether or not you've been an accomplished person, right? So we look at different criteria. Remuneration is huge, right? How much money you're making, right? It's huge when it comes to that type of visa. So if you've been really good at expanding your business and employing people, you're sitting in a position where it's pretty convincing that you can create even greater things if you're able to get a green card, right? So there's options, and at the same time, for people who are doing not only E2, but perhaps they have businesses in their own country, they can do as well, an L1 visa. And L1 is, like I said, an executive transfer visa, or a visa where you come in and you want to start a new office, right, of your business at home here in the States. And then that transitions into later on an EB-1C, which is a residency. And you're essentially saying, look, we opened up, a subsidiary here in the United States. We're doing really well. We have expanded our business, right? Our clientele base is growing. And now I don't need to be just here on a temporary basis. I want to be here on a permanent basis. So that's where the EB-1C comes in. So there's several pathways to do it. It's just a matter of planning.
What's the transition from the L1 to getting a green card? Is it the same thing? You have to file an EB-1 or EB-2, or isn't it different?
You file an EB-1C is what it's called. So the L1 is just, we always mention in our lives that there's, for every visa that gives you a residency, there's like a little brother or a little sister, right? Of the exact same thing. It's like pretty much the same requirements, but to a much lesser degree, right? And easier to get. In terms of the investment one, like I said,
yes, is like the E5 or whatever, right?
The EB-5 will be the big brother of investments, right? And the E2 will be the little brother, right, or little sister. Oh. And instead of spending $800,000, you can begin with maybe $100,000, right? And then you establish your business, you grow your business, you start employing people, and hopefully you're doing well enough that you have the necessary investment to do that step up to the big brother, right?
I've never heard it explained like that. That's great, because it's crazy. We've had so many conversations, but I don't think I've really ever heard it explained like that, but that makes a lot of sense. Very clear. And that's why I tell clients all the time, or people that are talking to me like, hey, we want to come to the US. A lot of Canadians on here are like, oh, I'm tired of Canada, but I don't really want to move to Dubai or Mexico or South America. I want to just keep it kind of the same. And they're like, I want to go to the US. For Canadians, let me phrase that to a question for you. For Canadians that want to go to the U.S., what are some great visa options, or what are you most commonly working with Canadians?
So Canadians, they really like the E2, but they have other options that no other people around the world have. For example, the TN visa is a great visa for Canadians, right? So the TN visa is a visa for citizens of Canada and Mexico, right, who have a business that's interested in employing them. There's about 50 different positions, right, that are included in the list of positions that are allowed to apply. For Canadians, is way easier. You can even actually bring in your application to the port of entry, right, and give it to the officer there. Where for Mexican citizens, you have to go through a little bit of a harder process. But they're very flexible with Canadians here in the United States. The L1 is a great option as well for Canadians. I meet a lot of people who have, service-based businesses, right? And they don't even think about the ability of doing an L1 because they didn't have any conscious understanding of the visas that are available there for Canadians. So, there's a really good relationship between, Canada and the United States when it comes to these visas, and they have a lot of options. E1 as well. A lot of people know about the E2, which is an investment one, but the E1 is a trade visa, right? So long as you're doing out of your international commerce and trade, not the one that you're doing at home, international. If you're doing 50% or more of that commerce or that trade, it could be services like technological services to different companies here in the States. You can get an E1 visa, and it's basically the same benefits as the E2. You can come in here as many times as you like, come out, bring in your family. Your family can, spouse can work, your children can go to school. So the E1 is a really, really good option for entrepreneurs, especially people who are also in the tech and service business. And so long as, your company is doing, 50% of their international commerce or trade with the United States, you can apply for this visa. So it's a really good option.
So to reiterate Joaquin's point, if you are coming to the U.S., this is definitely not a DIY thing. You should definitely speak with an immigration attorney and figure out what visa is best, because there's so many options. There's so many things to consider. I got a great question from the chat, Joaquin, that I want to jump right into. I'm going to show it for you because I don't know the answer to this either. Should you do, Joaquin, an EB-5 visa, or should you apply for the Trump card if you have the money?
Well, the Trump card is, as of now, just an idea, but it doesn't exist. Okay. It doesn't exist. It has to be, passed through Congress. There's a process that needs to be ongoing, and it hasn't happened yet.
So don't send Trump $5 million for a Trump card, because it's not real.
Yeah, they even created a website where you can sign up, and it was like something crazy, like, I don't know, like 500,000 people signed up. But I mean, you still have to go through the legislative process where this visa is actually approved and made into a law where you can give this visa out. So that has not happened. I'm not saying that it can't happen, but the EB-5 is the way to go now. The only way to go now.
3 more years to do this, so he'll get it done.
So yeah, it might happen for sure. It might happen for sure. It has to pass Congress, and then he can approve it. So yeah, but as of now, there's no Trump card. It's just publicity at this point. And then hopefully, they get to it. But right now, EB-5 is the only way that you can get through investment and residency.
Wonderful. Okay, so good answer. Yeah, good. It's an easy answer. That's not no right or wrong thing. I'm gonna take the channel off. I'm just playing around with StreamYard a little bit and making sure that we get the questions answered and all the things we can do on here. So guys, there's 30 people in here. Ask. Oh, I said that immediately. They left. Ask any questions you have on here about U.S. immigration and U.S. taxes. We just getting started. I'm still asking questions about immigration, but soon we'll talk about tax stuff because I want to get all my questions about immigration out first. So, what's the typical process, the timeline for an E2 visa? So, someone's like, Joaquin, I have this franchise I want to open, or I want to get this E2 visa. How long does it take from like me calling you to like getting the visa in my hand, and just run us through that process a little bit? And then also a follow-up question, which one of these is fastest, the visas?
Okay.
To get.
So yeah, for the E2, it depends a lot on the client, right? So we have clients that they move very fast. Okay. Obviously the process, as you know, and we use your services all the time. In order to open up the right entity and getting the EIN, it might take a little bit, right, on that end in the bank account. That might take a little bit of time, but after that is done and set up, and you have an entity here with a bank account, EIN, etc., then at that point, then the money can come in, and you can start investing in the business that you want to propose to USCIS. So depending on the speed of the person, right, in terms of investment and giving us all the documentation and information, we can, we're able to, finish a package within a month and a half to 3 months, right? That's typically the sort of the average time, depending on how fast, our clients are. Aside from that, you can certainly, have to go through a second step, which is the interview in your consulate. And the interview in your consulate depends on which country you are. Some consulates are faster than others, but I always tell my clients, it's very realistic for me to say to you that from the time that we say, hey, we're going to do this, right, and we hang up the phone and, everything's set up, the contract is set up, and we're getting our hands to work. From that point on, it could be 6 months when you come in with an actual E2 visa within a 6
Oh,
months.
you can come in. Wait, where do you pick up the visa from?
So the consulate, depending on the consulate policy,
And
so
that's in your home country?
Yeah, depending on the U.S. consulate in your home country, sometimes they mail it to you. Sometimes you got to go to certain centers around the consulate or around the cities that you are in order to go pick it up. Sometimes they tell you to come into the consulate and they'll just stamp it right then and there. They'll keep your passport, but typically it's a turnaround if it's approved of 5 to 7 business days for Canada, for example. Toronto is one of the biggest posts that processes E2s, and yeah, it certainly could be a very fast thing. We've seen it in 3.5, 4 months. You're already here, so it could be a very
not bad.
fast.
So are certain visas when you have to work through the consulate all the time? Again, I always ask these questions because they're kind of confusing for me too. You always have to work with the consulate. So if I'm a guy in whatever country, if I'm a guy from Uzbekistan and I want to get a visa, I have to go to the U.S. consulate in Uzbekistan, and I have to either file the papers for tourist visa or from whatever.
I love that question because you don't actually. As a matter of fact, there are consulates across the world that they accept what they're called TCNs, third country nationals. So they will take your case, right? And there's some consulates they're very backed up, like Bogota, for example. But then you can go to a consulate like Toronto, for example, and have your E2 visa get processed there. So you don't have to do it in your own country's consulate. And for strategic reasons, it might be even better. Some consulates tend to be a little bit tougher on these visas than others. So this is part of the strategy that that we bring in. At the same time, just so you know, like there's also change of status. You can do the visa if you're in a valid immigration status here inside of the United States, right? You can do a change of status to an E2, and you can do premium processing, which is basically you paying the government some money so they can give you an answer in 15 days. So in 15 days after submitting the application, you can have an answer about your E2 visa, and you can you can change status and then be on that visa from that point on. So it could be very fast.
I'm definitely would definitely not do this myself. This is crazy. So thanks for sharing your knowledge there, Joaquin. I'm trying to internalize and listen to all the stuff you're saying and remember it. But I'm just going to have you on again when I have more questions. I have a question here, a good one. I'm going to pin this one. This is a good one from Mohammed. He says, if someone is coming from a third world country and wants to come on an E1 visa and the sources are legit, like he's a real genius, but the funds are undeclared in the home country. So like Mohammed has a U.S. bank account. He made $10 million on e-commerce, but he never paid taxes in whatever country he's from. How does that work for the E1 and the verification purposes?
So if you're talking about the E1 in the sense that we just explained, right? The actual E1 that doesn't focus much on the investment. The E1 is more about how much trade and commerce.
Yeah,
but
he can't. He's saying he can't verify in his home country because he didn't pay tax on his home country. So they
don't care about whether or not you pay taxes in your home country.
They just care about the actual bank receiving the actual money.
Exactly. They care about the source of funds. How did you? If he's not referring to the E2 visa, which is more of a investment focused visa, right, as opposed to the commerce and trade that you've had with the United States. If he's referring to that one, they don't care if you have paid your taxes in your home country. What they do care is where did you get the money. So if your money is actually being sourced from businesses that you are managing outside of the United States, and you're making whatever X amount of
some websites, some invoices, some kind of
invoices and all that. So long as we can prove that, then that's the source of funds. That's where the money comes. They just want to make sure that it doesn't come from illegitimate sources, right? So they don't care. I mean, that's your problem. You don't want to pay taxes, or you want to avoid paying taxes in your country. That's your problem. That's your prerogative. They're more interested in whether or not the source of funds is a legitimate source of funds, right? So that's really the most important thing to them when it comes to where does the money come from.
Good one. And that's where that's a really funny thing to talk about, is that the US doesn't care what you're doing. So I talk to clients all the time, and I'm going to jump back to hide current comment. I'm going to jump back to one of the questions we got really quick. It's really a question from Abdul, And it also applies to the other guy who had a question on here, Roberto. So Abdul has a question. What's the best e-commerce company setup in the US for someone who has a Dubai company? So a lot of times I work with clients who are outside the US, and we set up US companies, and we make sure we do it in the way where you're not paying taxes in the US on what you're making, because all the work is done abroad. Sometimes people ask me, well, does the US care that I don't pay taxes in my home country or anywhere else? And the answer is like the same. No, the US doesn't care. It's in the US with the taxes. It's, are you subject to tax here for work you do here? If you're not, then you're not. It doesn't matter if you're paying taxes somewhere else. So that really applies for your situation. And a lot of the e-commerce setup, we open a lot of Wyoming companies and Delaware companies and get good addresses and ITINs for the clients. We help everyone with all that stuff to make sure that you set up to do e-com. And I work with some really big e-com sellers. And yeah, you don't have to pay. If you're living in Dubai and you have a Dubai company, maybe you own it, the LLC personally, maybe a Dubai company owns it. You can set it up different ways, but you don't have to pay taxes in the US to, you don't have to pay taxes abroad for the US to care about how your tax is imposed. And then I'm going to jump into the Roberto's question, because it's a really interesting concept, real quick, and then we'll jump back to the visas. But Roberto had a question. Holland is taxing your mother-in-law on unrealized gains, which seems insane to me, across the portfolio. That's so crazy. Your mother-in-law, so you're talking, is probably an older person. Unrealized gains could be insane. They could be in crazy unrealized gains. And you want to avoid further taxation. Here, what are some options? I'm going to ask your question on this too, Joaquin, but I think option one is leave Holland, and then option number two is move your money out of Holland. But I don't know. You're asking me how to not pay taxes in Holland. I can tell you how to do your taxes in the U.S., but that's a crazy question. I never heard about that. Have you heard about unrealized gain taxes in Europe, Joaquin? Is that a new thing?
Yeah, I mean, actually, through you and through your channel is where I hear the most when it comes to pretty excessive taxation. So that's why it's really good to have opportunities to come here and do your businesses over here and not get hit with such a tax.
Or move here and then manage your taxes, because even the highest marginal rate, the highest rate is 37% personally. Most people aren't hit at the highest rate. And if they are, then they're doing other planning stuff anyways. So, or they're not getting, if you're making $10 million, maybe you don't want residency, or maybe you just want to live where you want to live. We'll talk about that in a minute. One more thing, Muhammad, what if the source of income is the United States? If you go to the IRS website, you can see non-resident sourcing, how the IRS sources income for non-residents, and it's based on services where the income or where the work is performed, where the work and services are performed. So if you're not in the U.S., the source is outside the U.S. And if you're talking about for e-commerce, for business, for sale of products, physical products, it's where the sale happened, which is on the internet, which is also not necessarily not in the U.S. So for most of the common service businesses, info product businesses, e-commerce businesses, the sourcing actually wouldn't really be in the U.S., even if you're selling to Americans. It's really interesting. Let's see. Okay. Here we go. Finally, here's a good one with about taxes from Shad. If my business is sold whilst on E2 visa and I have a holding company abroad, can I save on taxes? I believe there's no exit tax if I'm on an E2 visa, right? Well, I'll talk about the tax portion, but I want to ask Joaquin and bring you back in here because I could literally talk forever. What happens so if you're on an E2 visa and you want to sell your business, does the visa end? Do you have to get a new visa? Do you have to renew it immediately, or you can't renew it? How does that work?
You can, so if you're switching businesses, you have to do another E2 visa if you want to remain in the country with that visa, right? But I mean, you have to stick with the visa, with the business that you apply for the E2. So if the business ceases to exist or is closed, whatever it may be the case, then you have to either apply for a new E2 based on a different business, or you have to, leave the country. So yeah, your business is tied to your visa for sure.
Okay, so for the tax portion of it, it depends what you're selling in your business and what your residency is when you're selling. If you are a U.S. resident because you've been living in the U.S. and you sell a business of something, if you if you own, you can't sell a business to yourself. It has to be done at fair market value, and then you'd be realizing gains on the fair market value of whatever you're selling. So there's a lot of rules around self-dealing and selling stuff to yourself to save on taxes. It's the U.S. tax code is very logical in a lot of the ways it works, and that's why it's so complicated, because it tries to be so fair that it overcomplicates and keeps like, well, in this case, in this case, so it just keeps layering on complexities. But that's definitely a core tenet of taxes, is there's rules among self-dealing. Now, if you sold a business to, and it depends also if it's a physical business. If you have a retail place and you have inventory and you have employees in the U.S., then it's really a U.S. source business. So even if you're not a resident, it's not taxable. But if you, it would be taxable. But if you're selling IP or something, then potentially you could have a portion of it not be taxable if you do it the right way. What I would say is, if you want to do this, get your E2 visa, get your business, make as much money as possible, and then call me and Joaquin before you sell the business, and we can figure out how we're going to structure the sale and arrange it. But you're kind of skipping to the end of the line with that question. It's a good question. I mean, it's an interesting question, but it's definitely loaded. And I think that was the answer there. Good stuff. What if my business is a holding company? Can you get an E2 with a holding company, Joaquin?
Yeah, so long as you're a majority owner, like the regulations just obligate that the person who is going to be the principal applicant owns at least 50% of the business. So if you're holding a member of a holding company, owner of the holding company, and you own 50%, you have a subsidiary that which the holding owns, obviously you're on the 50% range. You might own it completely, the LLC, but so long as you own 50% of that operating business, that's all you need. So yeah, we do that a lot, where you have a holding company and then one subsidiary of the holding company is doing the E2 business visa. And then later on, as they're expanding, they mix it. Essentially, when they do an extension or a renewal of the visa, they we basically put both of them together, so you can have several businesses if you like, right? You just have to make sure that you're putting the right amount of investment into the second one, and you have the projections. That's why we have a team that does business plans for visas.
But that's pretty uncommon to do it that way, right?
It is. It's a little uncommon, but I mean, sometimes people like mix sort of businesses and services that are sort of similar, right? Like maybe you started with a coffee distribution business, right? And then all of a sudden you want to open up a coffee shop. So that that makes sense. You know what I mean? So you start with that one, and then for your second LLC, you start the coffee shop. So then when you do the renewal, you basically say, hey, look, I already have a successful business here and here distributing coffee to, I don't know, supermarkets, whatever it may be, or coffee shops. And now I want to have my own coffee shop as well. So you can, have those two separate businesses and then just be part of the same sort of visa once you do a renewal of visa.
For the tax comment on that, which is very interesting, if you have a U.S. business, the owner has to pay taxes. If you have a foreign holding company, you might have to be filing 1120-Fs, which is suboptimal from a tax perspective. Generally, it's easier to run unless you're using a corporation. So there can be additional complications with taking dividends, taking money out, running the company, what filings you have to do if you have a foreign offshore holding company to get a U.S. visa. I think this is more typically done, and you can comment. I'd love your feedback here with an L1 visa, where you have a multinational that opens a corporation here, and then they do L1 visas. They don't really do E2s for the owners. Or that's more.
Yeah, they don't do E2s, and I mean like I said, it's a really really good visa that can lead to a residency, right? With the L1, all you're saying is that, hey, I'm expanding to the United States. I'm opening up a new office, or we already have an office there. We have, Americans and residents that are working there, but we need an executive to go sort of handle business over there and expand the business that we already have. So it's a great way to get a green card later on, because so long as you're proving that you've been adding value to this expansion office here in the States, then you can make a pretty convincing argument that it's necessary for the person to stay here permanently. So that's a really good way to do it. So for the people who have successful businesses in their homeland, you can, even for yourself, if you're the owner, so long as you have other people that can handle, the operation at your country in your country. But yeah,
But as we mentioned, those are generally like bigger companies. I have a buddy on an L1 here, but it's from like they have 50 employees in the foreign office, and they have 40 employees here. It's like generally a bigger thing. So E2s are more like solo entrepreneurs. It's like Bobby makes money and he wants an E2, so he just opens his own business, gets an E2.
Correct, exactly.
Because I think there's a lot more compliance and stuff, or with the L1s. It's just
not for the L1 you could do it. The ones that you're talking about, where they have 40, 50 people over here, like they call them blanket L's, right? So it's basically like a little bit of a more of a streamlined process, because they know, okay, you have X amount of
the employer is already approved, and they just need to do the verification on the employee level, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I get that. It's a different process, but it doesn't mean that medium to small and medium companies aren't able to do so, right? You have to find the right people to guide you to do it correctly.
Joaquin, I got a really interesting one from our friend Oyinda Akinyemi. I'm not gonna post it because it's in 4 questions. Do you see it on the chat here?
I don't.
So apparently Oyinda's B1, B2 got canceled. She should have obtained a medical visa instead of a visiting visa, so she got the wrong visa, and she cited the code. Renewing the visa is a hassle because she gets pulled over. I think it's a she, excuse me if it's not. If you get pulled over whenever you come to the U.S., is there any way of overturning, getting this off the records?
Well, I mean, if your visa was canceled already, you have to go back to your consulate and then, apply for another one. Time heals everything. So I don't know how long ago that happened, but, if you wait a little bit longer, that's something that certainly helps.
It says many years ago.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good. We would like to do something that is called a FOIA request, because it's really important to understand why it was canceled, right?
Well, it says it on here because they got the wrong visa. It should have.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. That's the thing. So, in my experience, and I'm not saying the person that asked the question is being untruthful, but like, things happen. People forget what really happened in the interaction with the agents. So that's why you get a FOIA, which is a Freedom of Information Act request. We do those, and then that way we get literally, if they allow it. Sometimes they don't allow it, and they want to keep things confidential. But most of the times they'll give you basically a description of what happened, why was it canceled, what's their position, meaning the government, on why it was canceled. And with that assessment, we're able to help you strategize in the best manner. So when you go back to the embassy and try to get, a visa, you have a much better chance of being approved.
Good one. So email Joaquin and figure out how to do a FOIA and stuff. Like, obviously work with an attorney and figure it out. Joaquin's an immigration attorney, works all the time, always working, works way more than me. It's the best. Okay, so My Life Gamer. Is it possible to raise money for your business based in the U.S. if you're operating the business remotely? I know it's not an immigration question. I'll answer quickly, and I'd love to hear your feedback, but it's always possible to raise money for any business as long as you have the good numbers and you meet the right investors. Anyone can fund or invest in any business anywhere. It's just more typically, if they're going to do it in the U.S., it's through a U.S. company. I've seen it done through foreign companies. I've seen all kinds of crazy stuff, but ultimately you have to have a good business model, and you have to have it presented in a way to which the right investor wants to invest in it, and then you have to meet those investors. Oftentimes with a U.S. company, it's more standard, it's more accepted and more common. That's
right.
You anything to add?
I mean, on that, I mean, look, for the investment visas, like, the money has to be yours, right? So it could be a gift too. A lot of people don't know this, but we do a lot of E2 visas where, hey, my mom or my dad gave me, $75,000 to do this, and that's totally fine. We obviously have we call them gift affidavits, where they're saying, hey, like, there's no, obligation on the part of my son, or even it could be even a friend, right? Well, to repay me this money that I'm giving them. It's a gift, right? No expectation of payment. It's not a loan, and you can raise the money that way. But if you have investors, then that's not like sort of your money. It has to be your money when you're applying for these visas, and if you have investors, then that wouldn't count for the investment visas.
Great question. It wasn't really the right. Okay, I'm gonna go to the next one. That's a good. That wasn't really what I was asking, but that's a good piece of information you shared, anyways. So I like that. Okay, Ryan has a question on here. I need to create U.S. and business bank accounts and rent a room. I need to create U.S. and business bank accounts and rent a room in the U.S. to get my payment gateway on. I have all my EINs and stuff. Which visa would be appropriate for it? Would it be a difficult process? Now, I'm going to comment here, and I'd love your feedback again. Hopefully, I give you some space to answer. So, yeah, Ryan, the payment processor stuff is can be pretty annoying. You don't have to necessarily get a visa to rent a room. You can rent a room from abroad. You can just do it online. I mean, we've helped clients kind of manage this before. If you can just go on Craigslist and find a place and rent it. I don't think you might need a visa to come visit the place, but you might be able to rent it or use the address or get some bills on there without actually coming to the US. And then if you just, again, I think the goal isn't to live in the US. I think the objective here is just to get an address. So it would probably be easier to maybe get a B1, B2 just to start, and then come to the US and just rent a place. Most people that are renting apartments aren't going to check your visa status. I don't know. I don't think they're required to do that at all, right?
Yeah, I mean that's not typically an issue. I mean, you lived in Miami, you know how many people that are foreigners that own apartments here in Miami, so that's not really an issue. I'm not really sure how it applies to a potential visa, like which visa you can. It depends on what you want to do. If you just want to be able to come in here in the States and, like I said, not work here, but sort of talk to your clientele base and expand it, or provider, whatever it may be.
You may not. I don't think you need a personal address unless you live in like Pakistan or something. Which respect to my people from Pakistan, but it's hard to get banking and stuff if you live there. So a lot of people need to have addresses in other places, residential addresses. Now, we provide our clients with the business addresses, and we help our clients with all this stuff and do all the compliance and advise. I work with all my clients, all that stuff. But sometimes people need a U.S. residential address for the payment process or the payment gateway that they want to use. There are definitely options that will work with non-residents, but it is a little bit more complicated. And I've had a couple calls with my guys from Compatents, and Bangladesh isn't restricted. Bangladesh is a fine country. So it's for the first payment processor you get open, if you can open up Stripe and manage it the right way, then you can use that as history. But if you're coming in cold, you have no sales, no history, then it can be tough. And the bank accounts can be a problem as well, but we help our clients with bank accounts. Bangladesh isn't a restricted country, so we've definitely worked with many clients from Bangladesh and gotten bank accounts open through referrals or introductions or other things. I think there's other solutions that are better than getting a visa to come to the US to rent an apartment to get a bank account. Like, I don't think you need to do all that stuff. I think a tourist visa is not bad. Put it through because it's going to take some time. Put in your application. But I think you can still push on the other stuff and have success getting those open and without renting a place.
Yep, I agree.
Okay. So can you do a top 5 states in the U.S. in terms of immigration and business friendliness? Now, this is going to be a fun conversation because it's purely anecdotal, not fact-based. Yeah. I'll do one, and then you do one, and then I'll do one, and we'll go through 5. So We'll start with, and I'll take the easy one. I think Florida is great because there's no personal income tax in the U.S. It's a huge state, so there's a lot of opportunity. It's pretty regulation light in terms of the stuff you have to do, in my opinion. And it's a very, at least in the cities, it's pretty international. And it's just a very diverse, big state. I think it might, like, top 5 states is one thing because the United States is huge. I might want to go to cities, but I said Florida is a top state, I think, for immigration.
Absolutely. We see it all the time. People think it's only Miami, but it's not. Orlando, it's very sought after.
Very international.
A lot of people.
So you agree with me? Good. What's your state? First one.
Texas. Texas is huge. We're getting a lot of people that want to move to Texas and do their businesses over there. So that's a huge state, and it's obviously very welcoming, especially around the big city and the areas around it. I mean, you live over there. You can get a big house for the price of what it will get you a little shoebox here in a big city like Miami. So yeah, and it's certainly that no tax, no state tax certainly helps out as well in order to grow your business.
This is a straight up loaded question. Top 5 states in terms of immigration, business friendliness. Joaquin's in Florida. I'm in Texas. We like these places. I'm in Florida a lot, but I'm between both. Really, there's not like you don't just move to a state only because of immigration and business friendliness. You got to see what business you want to do. If you're doing like a snow removal business, Southern California is not going to be a good business for you, right? So like there's obviously like depends on what business you want to do and where you want to go and what kind of place you want to be around. If you like humidity and heat, Florida and Texas are great. If you like cold winters, you maybe want to go to Maine or New York. You want to go somewhere where you get more seasons. I think weather is a huge component here. But then like also the state politics and the state, like some states are just harder. Like California and New York are states that have much harder rules. They just have a lot more stuff you have to do with these states, and to get businesses set up to run a business, there's more taxes, there's more bureaucracy, and they're generally not as friendly, but you know, they have a ton of opportunity. There's still people that go to New York and to different places in California. California is a beautiful state too. So if you love the beaches and the mountains and all the stuff they talk about and you have some money, maybe you want to go to California, but it's not affordable at all.
Yeah, and in the eyes of immigration, they don't care which state you go. It's a federal thing, right? They don't really care. In the end, it's just like whether or not your application, your visa application makes sense. And you want to go to New York, that's fine. You want to go to Iowa, that's fine. They don't particularly care where you end up, as long as the business that you're proposing makes sense. You know where you're going to take it, where you're taking it, and then you know you've done the correct things to convince the officer that they should approve it.
Maybe it's a personal question. So if I'm going to pick my top 5 states that I like to visit and do stuff at, it would be Florida, Texas, probably Colorado. I do like California. I like visiting. I like Colorado. It's not a good state for taxes and everything, but I like the layouts. You know, I like a lot of the Midwest. I like Utah is cool. I like Nevada is great. I probably like Nevada over California. And then California is just a great state to see. You know, upper Washington State has no income tax. Cool. Yeah. Okay. What do you have 5 real quick that you can roll off?
I mean, I think I agree with you. I think the Carolinas are pretty popular as well. Certainly have seen some growth there, and even Georgia too. You know, the Atlanta area and outside of it, we've seen a lot of growth. I mean, I'm just telling you what I've seen from people who are investing, you know, and also people who are transferring, you know, their businesses over here.
The southern U.S. is except for maybe Florida and Texas, but like the southeast U.S., like between Alabama, Georgia, there's just a lower cost. Everything's cheaper. So it's a lower cost to start a business than if you're going to a high regulation, high, you know, cost of living state. You can look at the cost of living. So I'm going to go to the next one because I don't know how long, if you want to stay here for 3 hours, but I'm going to answer these questions. We'll get through. I not even talk about any of my tax stuff. I just like answering questions. Emma is a dual citizen, U.S. and Canada. Doesn't have. Oh, I still have that post. I should posted this one. Sorry. Emma's a dual citizen from U.S. and Canada. Doesn't have bank accounts in the U.S. No credit score. Good credit in Canada. Looking to move back to the U.S. but not sure how. Well, first of all, if you're a U.S. citizen, you have to file your U.S. income tax returns. Probably no taxes to pay because you pay taxes in Canada, but you still have to file every year and do foreign bank account reports and all that. I would use your social security number and open a bank account and get a credit card. And, you know, what you can do is Amex has a global transfer. You can go get an Amex with your Canadian credit history and tell them you're moving to the U.S. and then get an Amex credit card. Some people like those. They have high fees, but high stuff. But you can move. If you're a U.S. citizen, you can come back to the U.S. whenever you want. Go wherever you want.
Say that you don't have to have a job lined up. You can come in here.
You just go. You can take your money, move to Louisiana, rent a place, and just you don't have to do anything. You just bring your U.S. passport at the border. They don't care. Yeah, you're in.
They don't care.
It's a moot point for you here. You don't need a visa. Absolutely. But you do have to pay taxes. Also, Emma said, also not sure how to navigate U.S. taxes, have filed Canadian. You should have been filing U.S. income taxes and reported your worldwide income because you're a U.S. citizen, even though you're in Canada. They have some reliefs for that. Generally, you wouldn't be paying taxes because the Canadian taxes are so much higher. that generally people don't. If you are in the U.S. and you have Canadian companies and you have to report all that too, there's potential penalties. You can schedule a call with me for we can go over it and kind of look into it because it's obviously very personal and particular. Can we? Oh, it's a good one. Can we apply for a B1 visa to open a business bank account in the U.S.? The visa you have doesn't matter. You can come in on an ETSA and open a business bank account. The banks don't really care that much about the visa. They are more particular about having a residential address in the U.S. If you're coming into the banks, some of the banks are, depending on what state, what branch, what bank you go to. And we definitely open accounts for clients without even coming to the U.S. at many different banks. But if you're here in person, it can be easier for sure. And they don't even ask for the visa, right?
No,
they don't even ask for the visa.
Yeah, that's not a huge problem. Like you said, it's more about like residential address and all that they care about, because I mean you're opening up, it's an entity-based bank account, right? So like
they want a business address and they want a personal address as well, but they want, I mean, I've seen it work in different ways and people can put it through. But yeah, you don't need a B1 visa. You don't even need to come to the US if you can avoid it. Ben's got a question. I have an LLC in Wyoming, but I want to get a visa so I can move to the USA. Which visa would be best? Ben, we need more from you, buddy.
Yeah.
Do you want to stay? The questions are, how long do you want to stay in the US? How much money do you have? Or are you able to invest? Are you a genius scientist? Do you have a massive family? It's from the UK. From the UK.
Yeah. You don't have to be a genius scientist either.
Or if you want the E1 or the E2, you know?
Yeah, the E2, yeah, those are investments. But I mean, I tell a lot of people, like, there's also a misconception about these other visas or talent-based visas. You don't have to like have a Nobel peace prize or be a genius scientist, like you said. As long as
I'm being facetious a little bit. This is entertainment, man. This is YouTube. You know.
But yeah, there's definitely a lot of options.
O1. How does we didn't even talk about this. Good one, Ben. So how does the O1 work? How would someone from the UK who wants to spend 6 months in the US at least get an O1 visa? And how does the O1 work? We didn't even talk about that.
So the O1 is the little sister of the EB1, right? It's a talent-based visa, right? It's really, really it has great benefits. They give it to you up to 3 years, and you can renew it as many times as you like. You have to just prove that you meet, 3 of the 8 criteria they lay out. Whether or not, you have good remuneration, whether or not you've been sort of like in the media, you've published articles within your industry, right? If you're like part of an association, that it's like a distinguished association within your industry. If you've been like a judge in a panel of other people within your industry, if you had a critical role in like big companies, right? For example, like we work with a lot of people who are in tech, right? Or finance, right? Or you're an entrepreneur, right? If you've done really, really well in your business, you can certainly try to apply for this type of visa. So it's a really, really good visa. Like I said, it gives you 3 years. You can bring in your family with you, children under 21, spouse, and it gives you the opportunity to come here to the States and also work on your profile so you can apply for an EB1 and get a residency. So it's a really good visa. It's just a lot of people don't know about it.
But if you and what a good attorney will do. Okay, good. What a good attorney will do here is help you build your case while you're working with them. So if you call Joaquin and you're like, hey, I want to do this O1, Joaquin is like, you got 2 boxes. Let's get that third one checked. And you guys get on a panel, write some articles, do what you got to do and put that case together and you can get an O1. O1's definitely doable. All of these visas are doable. You just have to check the boxes. It's all pretty. So reach out to Joaquin. Joaquin, maybe you have his email, channel, whatever. You got all the stuff, put it in there.
Absolutely. It can definitely help you out. I mean, I always tell people, especially with talent-based visas, it's like just because you might not be there right now, it doesn't mean that you won't get there. So it's just a matter of strategizing, partnering up with a firm like mine, and we can just get your profile a little bit more polished and ready to apply for this visa, and so you can come here with your family.
I was checking out your Instagram page, and I saw one of the guys I sent over you, and he had the whole. Yeah, I remember he came to you with no case at all, and you guys had to put the whole thing together, and he got his green card and everything, and it worked out really good.
Yeah, it takes a little bit more time, but good things don't come easy as well. So if you don't have everything right now that would make us comfortable in filing that petition, you just got to work with us in order to fortify your profile, and so you can get there.
So I'm going to answer the last couple questions on here, and then I'm going to go on a mini rant about taxes when you get your e-visa and the immigration stuff, and then you can feel free to interrupt me. But this last question here we got from Rizwan. Can't you open a service that offers a physical address, essentially a permit for foreigners to open a bank account similar to a virtual address? Yeah, we have that service. We offer addresses. We just don't offer residential addresses. The problem with the residential address is not as scalable. I'd have to be renting apartments all the time or using houses. I don't have that. But the business addresses we definitely have, and we help our clients get the bank accounts and the addresses. So we kind of run through the whole thing. That we do have that service. And we guarantee the accounts if we work with clients. Some clients we can't help, but we do guarantee that. So hold on. Okay. I currently live abroad but travel the US. Okay. What up, Ashish? Okay, so I'm gonna go. Okay, so if you are interested in getting a US visa, the important tax considerations are as follows. If you spend more than 120 days in the US year over year, you would pass the substantial presence test, and be a US resident. If you spend over 183 days in a given year, you're generally a US resident. And that means you have to report and pay tax on your worldwide income. As long as you stay underneath these thresholds, or you're able to file an 8843 and justify your closer connection to another entity or maybe a treaty position. There's always exceptions, but as long as you stay under those thresholds, you will only pay tax on what you earn in the U.S. from the potential U.S. business that you're operating. So it's a good opportunity to get some of these visas to come free travel, and that's great. But if you want to move to the U.S., it's also a good opportunity because then you can spend more time here and enjoy the benefits of living in the U.S., which we didn't even talk about. And potentially even pay less taxes if you're coming from the UK, or you're coming from Holland, or you're coming from Canada. Like all the people we talked to today, the taxes are up to 20% higher than the max rate in the US, and you get to those high brackets much faster. In the US, you can make $500,000 a year, be paying 25%, which is half as much as you pay in Canada for the same similar amounts. So that's kind of how it works in general. When you are a U.S. resident, you have to report everything on your worldwide income, but there's definitely planning stuff we can do. So that's the conversation we can have after you get your visa. Joaquin, I have nothing to do. I'm not in a hurry to run off this. It's been an hour. If you got to go, you can go, but I'm going to stay on and keep answering questions and hang out.
Yeah. No worries. I can stay on until about 4:55. Yeah.
Sweet.
So we got a good 20 minutes.
Fun. I have it set up really nice on the thing, so I have like a little prompt.
Oh yeah, of course. Let's do it.
And I can do it. I like chatting to people.
Let's do it.
And I'm like super high energy to drink this coffee. I'm jacked up. So let's go. Oyinda's back with another question. Oyinda has that's a good one. Okay, hold on. I run an e-commerce, but use a U.S. bank account to set up my LLC. Bank accounts and everything because it's the best and they're easiest. Yeah, we help people do that all the time. I currently live abroad, but travel to the U.S. from time to time. Will I be deemed to be performing services from the U.S. and therefore subject to taxes? My Amazon setup shows I'm not a tax resident of the U.S. So if you're selling on Amazon, you're generally not traveling to the U.S. to do business. It's not an automatic thing. As long as you stay under the residency thresholds, you won't really be at much risk. It depends on what you're doing. Obviously, if you're coming to the U.S. and you're speaking at a conference and you're getting paid speaker fees, that's hard to argue that. But if you're running an e-commerce business that runs the same whether you're in the U.S. or abroad, it's first of all, the IRS isn't going to ask the question. And second, if they get to the point where they're actually asking the question and challenging you about this, you have like a really good argument. So I think the risk altogether is pretty low. It's hard to say when and where you're earning the income. I have a lot of clients that travel to the U.S. 115 days a year, and they don't pay any taxes here because they're not working when they're here is the whole argument. So just don't do any live performances and try and stay away from doing anything that would be like in your face business work. That's kind of my advice there. Would we have the immigration risk from that side, Joaquin? Any kind of like coming to the U.S. and like working on your online business?
In here in the United States, well, it's a gray area. Like when they were writing the regulations, they weren't thinking about the internet and all that. But I take the position that if you're inside the United States, you're making money here and you're working in here, you're working without an authorization. So
Yeah, but this is different from like this is someone who runs an e-commerce store and they're in the U.S. for 3 weeks. Are they really working here? That's what we're talking about.
no, I mean, I don't, like I said, first off, it'll be extremely hard for somebody to notice.
Who's challenging that, right?
Exactly. But in general, like if it's like 3 weeks and you're here vacationing and you're answering some emails, whatever, for your team and all that, doesn't really mean that you're working here without an authorization. So no, I don't think so.
Okay. Real quick, Ryan. We definitely help with this stuff, but we work with people that already have LLCs. We just help them change the address and we get a new EIN letter for a new address for the LLCs. And even if you don't change the address, you can still make it work. I don't think. And if you wanted to, our service costs the same. We open new LLCs. We can work with the same LLC. It doesn't matter. It's definitely look into. Schedule a free call and see if it's a good fit. I can't. I have no secret to tell you to get this done. I don't know enough details here, but we got a question from a man, a shish over here. Wants to open an LLC, doesn't know about the state, already have B1, B2 visa. I'd say if you're concerned about banking, I mean, you're from India, so you're not too restricted on the banking stuff. You can do online accounts. But if you like go have a B1, B2, and you have a cousin that lives in New Hampshire and you're always in New Hampshire, maybe you would want to consider New Hampshire LLC. New Hampshire LLCs actually suck. Let's say your cousin lives in like Missouri or Texas or Florida. If you go and visit one state over and over, it is easier to do banking if your LLC is registered in that state. I know I'm in Texas. I'm an American. I have my addresses and all that stuff. I have LLCs in different states. I go around to the banks here and they like, is your LLC registered in Texas? Oh, nope, we can't work with you. Only some of the major banks will do it. They're so annoying. Like, it's registered in Wyoming. Who's going to go to Wyoming? There's no banks in Wyoming. You go to Wyoming, there's like 400 people that live in Wyoming. You thought I was going to say 400,000. There's 400 people that live in the state of Wyoming where everyone opens their LLCs. Yeah. Delaware's even worse. Delaware's one highway. I've driven through Delaware 47 times. I've never been to Delaware. I've just driven through it 47 times. Have you been to Delaware, Joaquin?
I have been to Delaware, yes.
But how many times have you driven through it? Well, I guess you're not from. I'm from Jersey, so we drive through it every time.
Yeah, summer times. There's some beaches over there that we used to. That's about it.
Delaware Tourism Commission. Contact Joaquin for promo opportunity. Okay. Okay, we got some more questions. Nice. This is a good one. Do we help people buy real estate without visiting? I can help you do your taxes and comply and get your accounts and stuff open without visiting. You should work with a real estate agent. I talk to so many people who are doing Section 8 real estate flipping who never been to the U.S. So it's definitely, it's not like a one size fits all service. You're gonna have real estate attorneys that you talk to in the state where the real estate is. You're gonna have accountants on the federal state level. I can do all taxes for any states, any federal. It's mostly federal taxes. But like if you're buying property in New Mexico, the state, you want a real estate attorney out there to look over what you're buying. You want a local attorney, especially if you're making a big investment in something like real estate. So it's not really one size fits all. They have a lot of programs that'll teach you how to do it. We got a question from my guy here, Osiris. How do you say that in Spanish? Osiris. I think it's Osiris. Is it right? Joaquin, how would you pronounce this in Spanish? Osiris?
Osiris.
That's a cool name. It's
Yeah.
definitely more common than Osiris, I think. If a Mexican citizen, I have my visa, been in the U.S. many times, I have a social security number because you're a college international student. Nice. That's helpful. This is a good one. Okay. If I have your LLC doing SaaS in digital marketing, can you pay your taxes in the U.S. instead of Mexico? I worked with many, many Mexicans in my day. And I worked with many attorneys in Mexico. I'm texting them right now. I'm meeting people all the time. It's obviously a close country, and Mexico is an interesting place. I'm not a Mexican attorney, but from my experience, half of the attorneys I talk to, maybe more than half, will tell you to use an LLC and don't report it in Mexico and just leave the money in the U.S. It's not probably the legal answer. I'll have other attorneys say, yes, make a corporate election and file as a corporation, pay 21% taxes, and then pay over your minimum. You can pay in Mexico, you can make $150,000 a year as a contractor or as a self-employed person, and you pay 3% tax on that. It's based on the exchange rate, it's a peso amount. So you can make $170,000 a year in Mexico and pay 3%, all in the Mexican banks, legally fine. But if you're making $800,000 a year, on the other $600,000, you're paying 50-60%. So if you wanted to have a corporation and pay 21% in the U.S. and then send over payments to yourself of $150,000 a year and leave the rest in the U.S., you can do that. Most of the people, and I have clients that do that. Most of my clients in Mexico just use LLCs anyways, and just don't report it in Mexico. Mexican tax system is really integrated with their banks there. So it's really a risk reward option. You can definitely pay your taxes in the US instead of Mexico, but ultimately at the end of the day, you're still running the whole business. And it's like that US corporations doing business in Mexico anyway. So you're still facing risks in Mexico if you're not paying tax in Mexico, whether it's at the corporate rate in the US or at the LLC tax-free rate in the US. So if you're doing at less than 150,000, just take it all in Mexico and pay 3%. That's my answer there. Oh, yeah, we can help you to put everything in order. Of course, you can schedule a free call, and that eventually you can get a call to me, a discounted call. I do calls all the time. I'm happy to discuss it with you, but you can do a free call, jamesbakercpa.com/schedule. And yeah, we definitely work with people who have set up LLCs all the time, because you can set up an LLC really cheap. A lot of people set them up and they're like, I can't figure this out. And then they work with us. And that's why we're very busy. Half the clients we work with already have stuff set up, and then they engage us to fix it. I'm going to get through these questions. Ashish has one more. I want to start LTAD business and I want to keep warehouse and keep inventory. If you're going to be doing online, if you're going to be doing a warehouse business and inventory, you probably want a U.S. corporation or an LLC tax as a corporation for that business to stop other tax exposure. Most people do those as cost centers. Yeah. Count us in on that one. Okay, yeah, you can do that. Schedule calls. How fast can we close a Delaware LLC? Delaware is the worst because it's expensive to close. You have to make sure it's up to date. Maybe a month. A lot of people just stop paying the renewals and let them expire. I should have popped that one up here. Okay, show that one. Thanks, James. You're welcome. Here's one. Hi. Okay, guys. I'm starting to fade. I gotta review some tax returns. Oh, here's one. Good for you. I'm tired of talking. Kareem has a question for Joaquin. I'll let you drive the whole thing. You can read it.
All right. So it says, how can we transfer the funds to the U.S. for E2 visa from a country that doesn't allow the transfer of funds abroad and still comply with the origin of funds that are legit in the country? I don't know particularly which country you're referring to. If you mean it, that you get taxed a lot for it.
No. Remember, we had this conversation about the guy from not Albania, not Georgia. It was that country next to Morocco.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I remember.
They couldn't, even Morocco, certain countries like Morocco, you can't send your money outside of the country. It's limited to $10,000 a year you can send outside the country.
Yeah, well, I mean, you have to get it out to the States somehow, some way, right? You have to transfer it to the bank account of the operating business. Perhaps, you start invoicing, and this is where James comes in, where you can have a really good structure where you can invoice basically through your American entity, and then that money can then later be used as a source of funds for the E2 visa.
So we have a thing where if you can, here's a workaround, was like if you have a rich friend, you basically give him money in your home country and he gives you money from outside the country. So do some kind of shenanigans deal where someone gives you money from, like, you say you have your friend Bobby, you have $1 million, and I'm gonna look up this country. Give me a second. Because I forget the name of it, but it was a specific one. We were trying to help this guy, and it was Algeria, big ass country. So the guy from Algeria wants to do an E2. He has $1 million. A lot of countries, right? Tunisia, Algeria, a lot of this region. He has $1 million in the bank. Your best friend has money here and in Dubai. You give him $100,000 in Algeria. He gives you 98,000 Dubai. He makes money, and you have the money you need, and you put it as a formal gift, and that's it. Yeah. This might even be the guy I was talking about.
Yeah.
That's it might even be the same guy. I think it's the same name. Yeah. So Tunisia, that's the one. Yeah. So it's still something that's the answer if we can find something like that. Does it work? You do that?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I mean, so long as we can show the source of funds, and have somebody just get it. We just got to trace it, right? So you can say that he was doing some sort of service for you, or you gave him a loan, or you lent him money over there, and there's documentation that shows that you gave him a loan, and then now he's paying you back, but he's paying you back in your bank account in the States. I don't see a problem with that.
So he's got to find someone who needs money in Tunisia first. So, yeah, ultimately, if you find a way to get money here, we can help you figure out the rest. But you have to be able to actually send money here somehow and plan it out. One last question for you, Joaquin. I'm going to put it on here for Adam. He says he's doing online coaching. He's crushing it. What's the best U.S. visa option that would let him live in America semi-permanently while continuing to operate his business? And I have an answer I'm looking for, but I want to see what you say.
Well, online coaching, I mean, I think your options are plenty. You can do an O1, depending on what you've been able to achieve in that career, or you can also do an E2. You're saying that I don't know how many sort of people or businesses you have helped in the United States, right? Or what percentage it is that you do, but if it's 50% or more, you can potentially do even an E1, where the investment is not the main focus.
So the answer is, to cut you off, Joaquin, the answer is schedule a call with Joaquin and see what plan fits the best and apply for that visa. That's the answer. Let's talk about it.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Leo can try any major bank. So Leo had one. I'm going to hang up, but I love answering questions. Leo said, I want a LLC in Delaware where she opened an account. Online banks are the best. And then whatever city you're traveling to, you can apply, but at major banks, Chase, Bank of America. And, you're going to need to bring a lot of stuff. But guys, I appreciate you being here. Like and subscribe if you're watching this later. I have the school community where I announced this. So if you want to join the school community, that's it. You can schedule a free call with me at jamesbakercpa.com/schedule. And Joaquin, how can people get a hold of you if they have any other questions about visas and immigration stuff?
Sure. They can just go to www.amerigolegal.com, and then in there you can schedule a call with my team. They'll reach out to you via WhatsApp, whatever means that you prefer. And then we can schedule a free call and give you a free evaluation of whatever pathway is best for you, depending on your situation. And you can also reach us Amerigo Legal Group on Instagram or any of the other platforms that we have, Facebook, and we'll be more than glad to help you.
Okay. I'll see you guys later. Thank you.
All right. Take care, James.